My name is Justine Aronson, and I am one of 19 women playing Lucha in Hopscotch.
My name is Delaram Camare, and I am singing Lucha in the opera Hopscotch.
So I'm Maria Elena Altani. I'm a soprano, and I play Lucha in Hopscotch, one of the Luchas.
I'm Susana Guzman. I play the oldest Lucha.
My chapter is chapter 14. Lucha is married but feeling a little torn. She's been told by a fortune teller in her old neighborhood that she'll receive a very important phone call, and my scene is her receiving that phone call, which is my future self calling to tell me to really live with my past and to not repress the memories of the parents that I've lost.
She's just received the phone call, so she says to the fortune teller, how did you know? And that's what you see in my scene. This is a fortune teller she's already visited, who told her, you'll get this phone call.
My chapter is basically a nightmare scene. Lucha is afraid, is dreaming that Jameson has left her for another woman.
Chapter 25.
My Lucha is basically a Freudian Lucha. It's the subconscious of Lucha. She is manifesting her fears, and she's trying to work through it subconsciously in my scene.
In my chapter, throughout my entire life, I have been told that there will be a phone call that I will receive that's really important, and I am drawn to this location as my older self, and there is a telephone there, and I realize that the phone call that I have been anticipating comes from me.
You are like the steam curling up
To be in a car feeling so alone for 4 or 5 hours, it was really difficult, and it's very isolating. You would think it would be the opposite, but when the audience is so close to you, you have to disconnect so much from them and pretend and work so hard to create the feeling that you don't see them. On the one hand, that really helped my interpretation of my scene, because Lucha feels very alone at that moment, and it felt very real to me, but at the same time, it was kind of a devastating thing to have to do 48 times a weekend.
This is not a traditional performing experience. It is basically like a marathon, because the audience doesn't realize that the performers are performing these pieces of music, like 10-15 minutes of music, 24 times a day.
Only once in all 5 weekends so far have I ever had to break character, and that was because a group got in and it was too cold for them, so they were looking for the vents, and they turned off the music. And I was gonna try to go on, and then I said, I'm sorry, I think you turned off the music, and I'm knocking on the window, and I'm panicking because the time is going, so I'm banging on the window. And he said, what, we hear, and I said, you have to fix that. I said, I'm so sorry. And then the little lady in the middle, she said, I'm so sorry, it was me.
I personally have zero control over anything. I'm constantly watching for hand signals from the production assistant, literally like this means one thing, like this means another thing, as to which particular scenes we're gonna cut, because I'm in the car and we go to a destination and it's all left turns, and then we come back from that destination and it's all right turns. So on the one way, the aria that I sing is about a minute longer than coming back. But also sometimes we get stuck at a light. Also sometimes there is road construction. So I have to decide which phrases am I gonna cut. I mean, this is giving the performer so much power kind of over what the composer wrote.
I meet with Veronica, the composer, and me being the hubris soprano that I am, I go to her and I say, oh, Veronica, you're writing this piece for me. I have a high, B flat above high C, that I sing in public, right? So don't worry, just, and do crazy coloratura, just do anything you want. And at first I was like, oh wow, this is so cool, it's great. But then I started to practice it and try and learn it, and I was tired after 5 times of singing it. So I thought, good God, how am I mean, you get paid to do it once. It's a miracle. Now I have to do it 24 times, so I had to go back to her and say, listen, Veronica, thank you for putting it, but do I get some liberty on, don't get me wrong, I still have the high note. Technique is paramount. It's all about how I get there. So that's how I created this scream, which also made sense in the context. But I have to sustain it over and over and over again, and without losing my voice. So how does that work? Just switching between resonances, and constant. Because if I use too much of this resonance, it's not good. If I use too much of this, so it's constant kind of switching back and forth within the piece. Now where I do it, I think by muscle memory, it just becomes certain places.
I had to dial it back a lot. After the first couple weekends, it was just taking such a toll on me physically, because I was crying real tears, and that wasn't planned at first, but it felt right with the scene in that moment. But after a few weekends, I was just getting so tired. As an opera singer, you can never cry on stage normally because you have a big room to fill, and that will really inhibit your singing. But in this small space in the car, I found that I could choke up a little bit and still sing. And after a while, it just became automatic. Like that moment in the music came and I would just start to tear up, and it got to the point where when I decided to stop crying, I would literally have to hold it back and tell myself not to cry because I had to keep singing and save my voice. It was just such a real moment for me, that moment when she says, I've had enough loss. I've had enough. I don't need to think about this anymore. It's too hard. And I feel left behind. And then Susanna's voice comes in and just says, you've never been alone. We've always been with you. And it still chokes me up, and because anyone who's lost someone that they love can relate to that feeling like they're gone, and then you get a reminder in your life that they're not, and that's still gets me. It's such a powerful human moment.
Once I learned the music, it was very easy to infuse Susanna and Lucha, and then to see and celebrate every second on my route is my life and Lucha's life intertwined. Every second.
The very first performances or even rehearsals, I felt emotionally drained after. I just felt, I felt the character so much. When I was reaching for Jameson, for instance, that scene where, with the guitar, my hands were really shaking, like for real. And when I would just, breathe, that's actually how, in reality, I felt. But then, as anything, which you do over and over and over, it becomes a sort of like meditation. It's the strangest performance experience I've ever had, quite frankly.
Audience members can see scenes in different orders. Like if you see everything in a different order, somebody in another car sees a totally different thing. That speaks to the infallibility of memory. We're not going to remember things the same way. We're not going to all have the same experience. If I'm me and you're you, we're going to remember it differently. It's amazing.
So much of the show she's searching for Jameson, and in the finale I decided to search for Susanna. So I don't know if this came across, but I was walking through the crowd singing my litany, but trying to actively look among the faces for a person that I didn't even know what she would look like.
We were doing the litany, and one of the mad Luchas came up next to me, and her face was right here, and we were singing the litany together, and we were in perfect fourths, which is not, it's not dissonant, and it's not a unified chord. It's an open chord. You could think of it as hollow, and singing next to her I feel like I am trying to infuse the younger ones with that sense of hope.
To look in her eyes at the end of the show, after all that searching, and find myself, and you just feel all this warmth flooding from her every time you're near her, and to see that across a sea of people.
In music, we have fortes and pianos, dynamics they're called, that let us understand when something is tender, when something is exultant, when someone is furious, angry, when someone is painfully hurt. And I think in life we have emotional dynamics, and young Lucha represents the quietest, softest piano, where you dream, and your dreams are all just right here. You could touch your dreams emitting from yourselves. And with Maria Elena, the middle Lucha, the light is completely gone to the public. But my character, as the older Lucha, has swum through all that, and I know that the light is not gone. I know that it is just deeply, deeply covered. And I think the young Lucha and myself are the only ones who really have great joy in our in our little journey. She, because life, her whole life is ahead of her, and she sees only possibilities, and me, because my life is behind me, and I see that I made it. Back to joy.